New low for the Republican-led Congress. The House passed a measly 27 bills that went on to become law this year, more than 200 short of what Democrats accomplished last year. As the New York Times points out, that is 27 bills pass, despite holding a total of more than 700 votes. Among them, 6 votes trying to censure Democrats, unheard of in recent history. Another 3 votes to expel admitted liar George Santos. Dozens of votes on far-right extreme non-starters. And 19 painstaking votes just to get 2 House speakers approved, one of whom has since decided to retire completely from the mess he helped create. From the Times, quote, that is more voting and less lawmaking than at any other time in the last decade, according to an analysis by the Bipartisan Policy Center. The numbers reflect the challenges that have plagued Republicans all year and are likely to continue and maybe even get worse in 2024. We are back with Rick, Eddie, and Mara. Rick, they took almost as many votes for Speaker of the House as bills that actually passed.
You know, it's sad, Alicia, and it's not, it's completely understandable why people have a low opinion of federal government and have no idea what it does. I mean, one of the things you think intuitively is that divided government is less effective than government with all of one party, when the House is in one party and the Senate is another party. History has actually shown that divided government is often more effective than when they're all aligned. And the problem is just the disaffection, the incompetence within the Republican Party. The Republican Party is more divided internally than it is against the Democratic Party.
I want to pick up on something that you said there and bring it tomorrow, which is the Times goes on to credit 3 major things here. Quote, a tiny majority that requires near unanimity to get anything done. Right? They have like a very slim majority, deep party divisions that make unanimity all but impossible, and a right wing whose priority is reigning in government, not passing new laws to broaden its reach. I just wonder how they pull it back off the rails.
I don't know how they pull it back off the rails. What I do think is that we often talk about just the extremism and the anti-democratic rhetoric as a sign that the Republican Party has essentially given up on democracy and is just interested in power. Absolutely true, no question. But this is actually another symptom, I think, which is to say there is a significant portion of this caucus that did not come to Washington to do the people's business. They did not come to govern. They did not come to pass laws that make the lives of Americans better. They came for the sake of staying in power for themselves. That is also an authoritarian trait. And we should talk, I think, more about that. Essentially, their constituents aren't their voters in their eyes. Their constituents are this right wing of Donald Trump's base who are on Fox News or whatever, the most extreme version of that party. That's their base. Their base is the right-wing troll that is going to give them credit, and their base is Donald Trump.
Right. And part of my concern is that doesn't just splash back on Republicans, that splashes back on Congress as a whole. There was a Gallup poll, this is back in September, 82% disapproval of Congress. Yes, it is happening under Republican leadership. I think if their core argument is government cannot be an engine of good, then to some degree it behooves them to have government dysfunction. It is much more challenging for Democrats who are like, we could actually be doing things to make your life better. We could be talking about housing. We could be talking about affordability. We could be protecting abortion rights. Instead, here we are taking a bunch of nonsense votes.
It's how to make that argument within the context of a broader defense and more robust defense of democracy as such. So there are 3 things happening just to distill the conversation in a certain sort of way, and that is a kind of partisan performance politics. These are these folks who are coming from these gerrymandered districts who are just simply owning the libs, and they're owning the libs out of self-interest, out of pursuit of power and the like. There's general incompetence. There's a whole bunch of stupid people on the Hill these days, and especially in Congress and especially in the Republican Party. Some of them are dumb as a doorknob. And then thirdly is ideology. And ideology is that for the long time, we heard it. We want to deconstruct the administrative state. We want small government, not big government, right? So how do you do it? It's not a do-nothing Congress. That's too generous. It's more like an ironic version of Melville's Bartleby the Scrivener. I prefer not to. Right? That's the mantra. I prefer not to do anything to help ordinary people. I prefer simply to be here, own the libs, right, and pursue an agenda that actually redounds to the people we care most about.
Right, because Rick Schneider, I have less than a minute left, but I think that's exactly the point, which is we used to understand that people wanted to hold on to their seats because they actually had a legislative agenda that they wanted to accomplish. That does not even seem to be quite the case here.
Yes, they don't even know, Alicia, what the word govern means. They didn't come to govern. They didn't come, as Mara said, to do the people's business. They came to unravel the people's business. They want to deconstruct the administrative state, deconstruct government. And we've never had such an anti-democratic major party trying to govern at one time. And that's why the wheels have come spinning off.